Hi there carpologists, and welcome to a lockdown special of the Open Access series. Today we're going to try and show you how to catch a fish during these sort of regulations and lockdown situation that we've got at the moment. Today we're at Pondwood Fisheries. It's local to me, it's about 10 minutes from my house. We're doing days only sessions. I'm going to try and show you how I catch a fish in such a short space of time. Pondwood is actually closed at the moment. However, hopefully there's some tips in here to show you how to catch a winter carp down on your local lake, or if you come down to Pondwood once it opens up after lockdown. So here we are down at Pondwood Fisheries. Like I said, it's about 10 minutes from my house. I fished it a few times in the summer on the surface and had some really good sport. So it's a perfect little winter venue to try and get a bite, obviously when it opens up after lockdown. So from what I know about it, it's quite an old, so the lake we're on here, Lake 1, it's quite an old lake, dates right back to the sort of 17th century. It used to be a duck shooting pond or like a farmer's duck pond. And then the rest of the complex here, there's a number of lakes, 3 or 4 lakes and a match lake. And they've been built on over time. I think the current owner took over sort of late 80s and he's gradually improved over time. So like I say, today we're on Lake 1, the island lake. It's actually a catfish lake, so it's full of catfish. But in the winter, obviously they slow down a little bit and the carp can be quite prolific, or hopefully can be quite prolific. We'll see how it goes today. Stock wise, don't really know. I know there's quite a few fish in here, haven't caught some off the top in the summer. But because of those cats, there's not that many small fish. So anything under about 8 pounds doesn't seem to survive very long with the catfish. So you're looking at quite a good stock of 10, 12, 14 pounders, a lot of low doubles. So we turned up this morning. Even though it's quite a small lake and it's a very short session, I spent quite a long time walking around because they can be, even in a small lake, quite localized. So during that time, I saw one fish crash, and that's in the little bay behind me. Quite a small common, again, probably right at the smallest end of what I think is in here. Quite a dark, chocolatey common. Saw that crash out a few times, so I put a rig on that, and I'm fishing the same rig on both rods. Little Ronnies, one with the pink hook bait, one with the white hook bait, and we'll look at that later on. So put that on the left-hand side in the little bay, and then I've put the right-hand rod in the other little bay behind me. However, from this point on the island over the bridge, I can see the whole lake. I can see the 2 bays behind me, and I can see most of the water out in front of me. So if I see anything, I'll react to it and put a rod on it. I say it looks very bright today, but it's still quite cold. Temperatures are low. We are end of January, so it is still what I'd class as winter fishing. Both rods are out. We'll see how it goes. This is our first bite from down here on Pondwood. I think this is the fish that we saw. So I saw a fish, a little dark common like this jump out a couple of times, and that's why I chose to put the rod in that spot. Little tiny common, probably about the smallest you'll find in Pondwood. Anything smaller than this gets eaten by the catfish, like I said earlier. So still really happy to have caught one. It's so cold today. It looks bright, but it's so cold. We had a big storm last night that dumped a lot of cold water into the lakes. We've also got a bit of snow melt. So I'm really happy to have caught one. The rod's already back out, so hopefully we can go and catch another one. So this is the same rod that did the small common about an hour ago. I didn't put it back on the same spot because just as I was about to recast, the fish showed twice a little bit further out. So far in the session, we've seen 2 fish and had 2 bites. It just shows the value of reacting to what you see and fishing where the fish are. Despite the cold weather, it's still hanging on, giving a good account for itself. Job done, fish number 2. So it's lunchtime, and so far we've had 3 bites today, landing 2 of those lovely little commons. I'm just going to talk you through the rig that I've been using on both rods and the approach that I've taken. So the rod itself is, or the rig itself is a Ronnie. I'm not a massive fan of the Ronnie. I don't use it very much. I think there's too much going on at the hook end, and everybody's using it. However, for today, on day sessions where I want to be able to change the hook bait really quickly, I like the quick change nature of the hooking arrangement, and I also like to be able to present a low-lying bait over the sort of leaf and 𝘃𝗶𝗀𝗲 that's out there at the moment. I fished mine on with a D, a slip D, so I've heard it called the slip D rotator or the Ronnie rotator, whatever you want to call it. It's a Ronnie, but instead of sliding on the shank, it slides on a very soft, supple D. It's a relatively small hook. It's a size 6 ESP cryogen curve. That goes down to a little size 11 quick change swivel covered with a little bit of silicon tubing. I've got quite a long boom again because of all the leaf matter that's out there, sort of 10-12 inches, and I use a very soft, supple fluorocarbon for my booms on this rig. Again, I want it to lie over the top of all the debris on the bottom out there, so I don't like a stiff boom when fishing it in this manner. I've got a small ESP sinker about halfway down, and then a usual lead clip set up, some blobs of putty up the line, and I've fished that fluorocarbon main line straight through. I'll take you through exactly how I tie the rig and the components I use later on. So hook baits I'm using 2 or 3 different hook baits, and they're all little homemade pop-ups. So I've got some yellow and some white, some fluoros in a sort of a blackcurrant flavour, and they're glugged in a little bit of betadine. And then I've got a pink, originally it was an almond flavour 12mm pop-up, but they're glugged quite heavily in one of the goos, so they've changed colour slightly, and that goo has sort of overpowered that almond, or they do complement quite well. I use the bumbleberry goo and the almond flavour of the original bait, and they work together quite well. So far I've caught on the pink and the white itself. I had a couple on the pink and a couple on the white. I haven't actually tried the yellow yet. For some reason, just white is my go-to bait, and then pink with the goo on it in the winter as my change bait. So I'm sure sometime today I'll try a yellow and see how we get on. So that's what I'm using for hook baits, and I'm just topping them with a few maggots, 8 or 10 small red maggots, using a needle to thread them onto the floss, very similar to what we did down at Twinesh for those of you that have watched that video. And then attaching, hooking on or tying on a walnut-sized bag of maggots, and those maggots have just been dusted in some of the sticky manila active powder just to add to that attraction. What I'm doing then is using a number of different liquids, so I'm just rotating through them, trying to see if there's a preference on the day, or will one get more bites than the other. And the 3 liquids I'm using is straight up betadine, so I'll dab the bag with a bit of betadine after I've hooked it. The bumbleberry goo that I've already used, so again, if it's a bumbleberry hook bait, I'll just put a little bit more on the outside of the bag, and the manila cloudy liquid. So far I've had 2 bites on the manila and 1 on the betadine, nothing yet on the goo, but I'm sure that could change through the day. So that's the rig I'm using, the hook baits I'm using, tactics, and the liquids. Another little pondwood common, like peas in a pod, these fish so far. Another one caught on the low-lying sort of slip D Ronnie rig with a soft boom. I just showed you and outlined the rig. I'm now going to take you through the few steps of how to tie it. So I've just landed another one of those little pondwood commons. It's turned into quite a good day. I thought it was going to be a bit of a grueler of the storm last night and the cold weather, but it's turning out quite well. So I'm just going to show you, I've showed you the rig, I'm now just going to show you how I tie it. So The Ronnie section, or the hook end section, sorry, is the cryogen curve barbless in a size 6 as per the rules. I tied a few of these up at home, so I tied about 6 up before I came today, and that makes the process of changing the hooking section really quick. So I then take a short piece of braid, pass it through the eye twice to form that loop, or that D section. I then take a small hook ring swivel, one of the smallest ones, slide that onto the D section, and then the loop of the D goes over the point and back on itself. I situate the D roughly where the barb would be, quite far on the shank, but opposite where a barb would be if it were a barbed hook. Hold it tight against the shank and then do a real quick 5-turn knotless knot. Pass it back through the eye. And pull it tight. That there gives you that real, it makes the hook sit really well and ready to grab hold. It also gives that little bit of movement up and down that loose slip D to help separation between the hook bait and the hook when a fish takes it in its mouth. I cut off tag ends. And then being careful not to damage the knot or the D itself, I then blob those 2 ends down with a lighter. So that's my hooking section tied. And like I said, I tied about 6 of these up last night, expecting a bit of action, or just enable me to be able to change as quickly as possible and not waste time on these very, very short day sessions. Don't want to be wasting time tying rigs. I tie these up and they'll stay in that hook bucket for as long as you need them. That's the hook section. I'll just tie the boom. So as I said before, I use a really supple fluorocarbon for my boom. There's no stiffness to it at all really, just enough to kick it away from the lead. So I cut off sort of 16-18 inches of the soft fluorocarbon. This fluorocarbon is actually a main line, it's not even a hook length, that's how supple it is. It's designed to use the main line, but I like how it lays over obstructions on the bottom. So I attach that after I've cut off the ring swivel, or the ring of the swivel, sorry, because I want this to be as low-lying as possible. If there was low-lying weed rather than low-lying leaves, I would look to leave that ring on so it sit ever so higher. In this situation where I just want it clear of the leaves on the bottom, the swivel itself is enough. So I clip off the ring and then attach that to my fluorocarbon boom with a figure of 8 knot. So I like it to be a loop at the swivel end, but I don't like it to be too big. So I'll take a bit of time to try and work it down and make that loop as small as possible. Wet and then pull tight. At this stage you can thread on a small sinker. I use the ESP tungsten small ones. Slide that down about halfway, followed by an anti-tangle sleeve. I then leave these booms as they are, so not tied off. I don't loop the other end. I tie that as a knot straight to the swivel at my lead end. The boom, so it's quite robust. You can use this for a number of fish. I'm not necessarily concerned about changing this as quickly as I will be the hooking section, but I'll just show you how to attach that hook section. So take some wide bore silicone. So this is or heat shrink tubes. This is 2.4mm. I used to mess around with the 1.6. It took ages to get it on, and I now find that the 2.4 is much easier to attach, but shrinks down more than enough. So I thread that over the quick chain swivel. Attach the hooking section just like you would any normal Ronnie rig. Slide the silicone over the eye of the hook and the crook of the quick change swivel, and then again being careful not to damage the boom or the D, and then just shrink that down with a lighter. That's the finished rig, as I say, ready to be tied direct to the swivel of whatever rig you're using. A little bit of putty on the knot to counterbalance that rig, and that's ready to go. And then I'll just snip off the silicone tubing and change the hook section each time I catch a fish. Both rods are out now. I'm going to tie up a few more hook sections in case to get a few more bites later on. So we've come to the end of our session here on Pondwood. We started fishing at 8:30, it's now 4:30. We've had a hatful of these really cool little commons. Really good fun days fishing, all within the restrictions, all local to me, a really good day. So that fish you've just seen is the last of the session, and it's time now to pack up and head home. Session stats, as always, have had 4 fish and lost 1. Interestingly, all 4 of those fish, all 5 of those bites essentially came after casting to a showing fish. So we've sat here for a lot of time today in likely looking areas, catching nothing. As soon as we've seen a fish show, I've had that 3rd rod ready, tied up to go. I've dropped it on the head, and within sort of 30 minutes, that rod's gone. So of the 5 fish we've seen today, we've had a bite off every single one. It's really interesting, and it gives you a really key insight into winter fishing and not to ignore those shows. So caught 4, lost 1. I've used a pint of maggots max and a handful of pop-ups, so absolutely minimal bait. I've used the same rig all day long. You've seen that low-lying 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗲 Ronnie. I've fished 2 swims, but within those swims I've probably made 30 casts and fished 30 different areas up against the reeds, long, short, showing fish, fizzers, bubbles. I've just moved it around every 20 to 30 minutes all day trying to get that bite. So like I say, that's the end. Time to pack up and get going. Massive thank you to Josh and Mick for having us down. I can't wait to come back down again when it opens up properly to the public. So there you have it. We were rudely interrupted when we were doing our session stats. That's 5 fish. It's another one of those small commons. 1 fish lost. What a great day's winter fishing. See you all again soon.